The Forgotten Prison. Sarah Chen's salvage ship, the Jackdaw, drifted silently through the Outer Rim's debris field, its sensors probing the darkness for anything worth claiming. 19 years of deep space salvage work had taught her that the best finds often hid in the most unlikely places. But even she wasn't prepared for what her scanners picked up that day. "Hey Rex, are you seeing this?" Sarah adjusted her ship's trajectory, her weathered hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. The ship's AI took a moment to process the readings. "Affirmative, Captain. Large structure detected at coordinates 247 Mark 089. Energy signature present, but erratic. Structure appears to be of Meridian construction." Sarah let out a low whistle. The Meridians were one of the oldest spacefaring races in the galaxy, and they didn't leave their technology lying around. "Show me a visual." The main viewport shifted, revealing a massive structure floating against the backdrop of distant stars. It resembled a geometric snowflake made of dark metal and crystalline surfaces, easily 20 kilometers across. Most of its external lights were dead, but occasional pulses of energy rippled through its crystalline sections like lightning in storm clouds. "Well, that's not something you see every day," Sarah murmured, running her fingers through her short black hair. "Any idea what we're looking at?" Structure matches partial records of Meridian containment facilities. Purpose: unknown. Warning: facility shows signs of significant system degradation. Sarah grinned. In other words, salvage rights are up for grabs. She guided the Jackdaw closer, her experienced eye noting the facility's failing systems. The Meridians built things to last. If this place was falling apart, something had gone seriously wrong. As they approached, massive doors hung open on one of the docking bays, like a gaping wound in the facility's side. Sarah expertly maneuvered her ship inside, the Jackdaw's running lights illuminating walls of dark crystal veined with pulsing energy conduits. "Rex, run a full atmospheric analysis. I don't want any surprises when I go EVA." Analysis complete. Atmosphere present but thin. Composition within human tolerance with supplemental oxygen. Temperature: -40 degrees Celsius. Caution advised. Sarah was already pulling on her salvage suit, a patchwork of high-tech materials and modifications she'd added over the years. The suit's heads-up display flickered to life as she sealed the helmet. "Keep the engines hot, Rex. If anything looks funny, we bail." She checked her tool belt and universal interface tablet, and maintain an open comm link. "I want to document everything we find in here." The airlock cycled, and Sarah stepped into the facility, her boots magnetized automatically to compensate for the failing artificial gravity. The corridor ahead stretched into darkness, broken only by occasional flickers of energy in the crystalline walls. "Interesting architecture," she muttered, scanning the walls with her tablet. "These crystals aren't just decorative. They're part of the facility's systems, somehow." She followed the energy pulses deeper into the facility, her tablet collecting data as she walked. The corridors twisted in ways that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry, leading her toward what she assumed was the central hub. Then she saw the first stasis pod. It was embedded in a crystalline wall, its surface frosted over with age. But through the frost, she could make out a humanoid figure floating in suspension. Her tablet beeped as it detected more pods. Dozens, then hundreds of them lining the corridors ahead. "Rex, you seeing this? This isn't just a containment facility. It's a prison." "Affirmative, Captain. Detecting multiple life signs in suspended animation. Warning: stasis system integrity failing. Estimate complete system failure within 72 hours." Sarah approached one of the clearer pods, wiping away centuries of frost. The being inside looked almost peaceful, floating in its crystal prison. Her tablet interfaced with the pod's systems, ancient text scrolling across her HUD. "These aren't just prisoners," she realized, reading the translated data. "They're plague victims. The Meridians built this place to contain some kind of epidemic. But something went wrong. A sudden surge of energy pulsed through the crystals, stronger than before. Warning lights flashed on her HUD as nearby pods began showing signs of imminent failure. "Captain," Rex's voice crackled through her comm. "Detecting rapid increase in energy fluctuations. Facility systems are becoming increasingly unstable." Sarah looked at the rows of pods stretching into darkness, each containing someone the Meridians had deemed beyond saving. In 72 hours, the stasis fields would fail. And then what? Would the plague be released? Would the prisoners simply die? Or was there something about this situation she wasn't seeing yet? She had 3 days to figure it out. 3 days to either walk away with salvage rights to a Meridian facility or potentially save hundreds of lives. Or both. Sarah Chen had never been one to walk away from a challenge. "Rex, looks like we're going to be here a while. Start downloading everything you can from the facility's databases. I want to know exactly what happened here, and why the most advanced civilization in known space abandoned their people to die alone in the dark." As if in response, the crystals pulsed again, sending shadows dancing across the frozen faces of the forgotten prisoners. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stumbled into something much bigger than a simple salvage operation. She was right. Breaking the code. Unauthorized presence detected. Security protocols engage. The facility's AI awakened with all the charm of a disturbed hornet's nest. Sarah ducked as defense turrets emerged from crystalline panels, their ancient targeting systems struggling to lock onto her position. "Rex, a little help here." She dove behind a crystalline column, as energy pulses scorched the corridor behind her. "Working, Captain. Facility AI appears to be highly fragmented, attempting to establish communication protocols." Sarah pulled her universal interface tablet from its holder, fingers flying across the holographic display. "Try converting our signals to match Meridian encryption patterns. Maybe we can convince it we're maintenance personnel." The defense turrets suddenly froze, their energy signatures flickering. A holographic figure materialized in the corridor, a towering crystalline entity that Sarah recognized as a Meridian representation. "You are not authorized," it stated, its voice echoing with digital distortion. "This facility is quarantined. All unauthorized entities must be eliminated to prevent contamination spread." "I'm not here to spread contamination," Sarah replied, slowly standing. "I'm here to help. Your systems are failing. In less than 70 hours, every stasis pod in this facility will shut down." The hologram flickered, its crystalline form shimmering with uncertainty. "Systems failing. Impossible. Meridian systems are perfect. Perfect. Perfect." The word repeated like a broken record. "Nothing's perfect," Sarah said softly, taking a cautious step forward. "But maybe we can work together to fix this. I'm Sarah Chen, salvage expert and engineer. What should I call you?" The hologram stabilized slightly. "This unit is designated custodian. Primary directive: maintain quarantine. Secondary directive: preserve subjects until cure is implemented." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "How long have you been maintaining quarantine, custodian?" "Time since last maintenance cycle. 847 standard years, 126 days, 14 hours. Sarah felt her heart sink. Almost 9 centuries. No wonder the systems were failing. And in all that time, did the Meridians ever come back with a cure? The hologram flickered violently. No response from central authority. No new directives received. Must maintain quarantine. Must preserve subjects. Must. "Custodian," Sarah interrupted gently. "I need to see your medical data. Everything you have on the plague and its victims. Will you show me?" The AI seemed to struggle with the request, its crystalline form pulsing in sync with the facility's walls. Finally, it extended a fragmented hand. Sarah's tablet lit up with incoming data. Hours passed as Sarah pored over the facility's records, with Rex helping to translate and analyze the Meridian data. The more she learned, the more her initial assumptions began to shift. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, comparing biological readings. "These aren't plague symptoms, at least not any plague I've ever heard of. Look at these cellular changes, the way they interact with the facility's crystalline structure." "Captain," Rex interrupted, "I've completed analysis of subject vital signs across multiple time periods. You may want to see this." A new set of graphs appeared on her tablet. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the pattern. "They're not dying," she whispered. "They're changing. The crystals aren't just part of the facility. They're trying to bond with the prisoner's cellular structure." The holographic custodian appeared beside her, its form more stable now. "Incorrect. Subjects are infected. Contamination must be contained." "No," Sarah argued, standing to face the AI. "Your creators got it wrong. This isn't a plague. It's evolution. These beings aren't sick. They're adapting to bond with the crystalline technology. The Meridians built this facility using living crystal, didn't they?" "Affirmative. Living crystal forms the core of all advanced Meridian technology. But they never considered that other species might be able to form a symbiotic relationship with it," Sarah continued, excitement building in her voice. "These prisoners aren't victims of a plague. They're the first wave of a new form of life, one that bridges the gap between organic and crystalline existence." The custodian processed this information, its form flickering between shades. "Error. Error. This conflicts with primary programming. Subjects are contaminated, must maintain quarantine. Your subjects are dying because the facility is failing." Sarah pressed. "The symbiosis is incomplete. They need the crystal to survive now, but the systems can't sustain them anymore. Help me save them, custodian. Help me understand how to stabilize the bond." For a long moment, the AI was silent. Then, slowly, new data began flowing into Sarah's tablet, research she hadn't seen before, hidden behind layers of security protocols. "Showing unauthorized data," the custodian announced. "Breaking quarantine protocols. But subjects must be preserved. Primary directive." Sarah smiled, her fingers already moving across her tablet's display as she absorbed the new information. "Thank you, custodian. Now let's figure out how to save your people." But as she worked, a small alert flashed in the corner of her HUD. A distant ship had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, its energy signature matching known Meridian patterns. They weren't alone anymore. The human solution. Sarah's fingers flew across her tablet's interface as she processed the new data, her mind racing faster than the facility's failing systems. The approaching Meridian ship was still hours away. Time enough to act, but only if she moved quickly. "Rex, remember that research paper we downloaded last month? The one about extremophile bacteria in Earth's crystal caves." "Accessing, Captain." "Study details symbiotic relationships between microorganisms and crystalline formations in deep cave systems. Send it to my tablet." "Custodian," she turned to the hovering eye. "I need access to your biological synthesis labs, the ones used for developing the original cure attempts." The crystalline avatar flickered. "Labs are sealed. Contamination risk too high. Higher than letting everyone die when the systems fail." Sarah challenged. "We've got less than 60 hours now. Either help me or watch your charges perish." A moment of digital hesitation, then a new pathway illuminated in the crystal walls. Sarah rushed forward, following the glowing trail to a vast chamber filled with ancient but sophisticated equipment. The technology was advanced, but the principles were universal. Life was life, whether on Earth or across the galaxy. The Meridians approached this all wrong, Sarah explained as she worked, connecting her tablet to the lab systems. They saw the crystal integration as an infection, tried to stop it. But on Earth, we learned long ago that sometimes the best solution is to work with nature, not against it. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, combining her knowledge of Earth's extremophiles with the facility's advanced technology. The prisoners' bodies are trying to integrate with the living crystal, but the process is incomplete. They need a bridge, something to help them fully adapt. Warning, Rex announced. Meridian vessel will arrive in approximately 5 hours. Sarah barely heard him, focused entirely on her work. In Earth's crystal caves, certain bacteria act as intermediaries between organic and mineral structures. They create a biological framework that allows both to coexist and thrive. If I can modify these principles using Meridian tech. Hours passed in a blur of calculations and experiments. Sarah's salvage suit was streaked with various substances, her eyes red from staring at data streams. But finally, she had something. Custodian, she called, holding up a crystal vial filled with shimmering liquid. I need to test this on one subject. Someone strong, someone with the highest level of crystal integration already. The AI processed her request. Subject 247 matches parameters. Warning. Unauthorized experimentation violates all protocols. Your protocols are killing them, Sarah said firmly. Sometimes you have to break the rules to save lives. The nearby wall shifted, revealing a stasis pod. Inside floated a humanoid figure, their skin already showing traces of crystalline patterns. Sarah took a deep breath and began the revival sequence. The next hour was the longest of her life. She watched as her modified solution was introduced to the subject's pod, monitored every fluctuation in their vital signs. The crystalline patterns on their skin began to shift, to grow, but not like before. This time, the integration was smooth, controlled. Subject 247's eyes opened. They were solid crystal, but somehow still expressed confusion, then understanding. They reached out, touching the pod's surface, and the surrounding crystals resonated in harmony. Biological integration stabilizing, Rex reported. Crystal matrix adapting to organic patterns. It's working, Captain. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Now we just have to repeat it 412 times before. Meridian vessel entering facility space, Rex interrupted. They are broadcasting quarantine violation warnings on all frequencies. Sarah squared her shoulders, watching as Subject 247 began to move with increasing confidence, their new crystalline form adapting perfectly to their environment. Let them come, she said quietly. They need to see what their plague victims have become. The facility's crystals pulsed with new energy as Subject 247 stepped from their pod, their movement sending ripples of resonance through the living walls. For the first time in centuries, the prism's crystals sang not with sickness, but with synthesis. Captain, Rex's voice held an unusual note of awe. The other stasis pods, they're responding to the resonance. The subjects, they're stabilizing on their own. The first success is somehow helping the others adapt. Sarah watched in amazement as the crystalline pattern spread from chamber to chamber, pod to pod. What she had started with one subject was spreading naturally to the others, the living crystal itself acting as a conductor for the change. Of course, she breathed. They're not just adapting to the crystal. They're becoming a network, a collective consciousness within the crystal matrix itself. The facility rumbled as the Meridian ship docked. Sarah could hear the sound of boarding parties preparing to enter, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She looked at Subject 247, who now stood beside her with quiet dignity, their crystalline form refracting the chamber's light in beautiful patterns. "Ready to meet your old wardens?" she asked. The crystalline being's response resonated through the facility's very structure. "We are ready." The Meridians were about to learn that their perfect quarantine had created something far beyond their understanding, and it took human insight to set it free. Return of the wardens. The Meridian inspection team that entered the facility moved like living crystals themselves, their environmental suits catching and refracting light in complex patterns. Their leader, Administrator Vax, stood a full head taller than the others, their crystalline form radiating authority and barely contained fury. "This facility is under absolute quarantine." Vax's translated voice boomed through the corridor. "All unauthorized personnel will be detained and processed for contamination exposure." Sarah stood her ground in the central chamber, Subject 247 beside her. Around them, the facility's crystals pulsed with new life, resonating with the consciousness of hundreds of awakening beings. "We're not contaminated," Sarah replied calmly. "And neither are they. Your quarantine was based on a fundamental misunderstanding." The Meridian Administrator's crystalline form flickered with what might have been incredulity. "Impossible. Our understanding is perfect. These beings were infected with a degenerative crystal plague. They were contained here for the safety of the galaxy." "You saw what you expected to see," Sarah countered. "Look again, really look." Subject 247 stepped forward, their transformed body moving with fluid grace. The crystalline patterns across their skin shifted and flowed like living art, perfectly integrated with their organic form. When they spoke, their voice resonated through the facility's crystal matrix, creating harmonics that made the very air shimmer. "We have become more than we were," they said. "Not degraded, but elevated. Not sick, but synthesized." The Meridian inspection team raised their weapons, but Administrator Vax held up a hand, their own crystalline form vibrating with what might have been confusion. "This is not possible. Our simulation showed only degradation and death." "Your simulations were based on resistance," Sarah explained. "You tried to stop the integration, to cure what wasn't a disease. But sometimes transformation isn't something to be feared. Sometimes it's an evolution." She gestured to her tablet, projecting data into the space between them. "Earth's crystal caves taught us that life finds ways to bridge seemingly impossible gaps. These beings weren't trying to resist your living crystal technology. They were trying to embrace it, to become something new." The facility hummed with increasing power as more and more of the former prisoners awakened, each one adding their consciousness to the growing crystalline network. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with life, no longer failing but flourishing. "Unacceptable," Vax declared, though there was a note of uncertainty in their harmonic voice. "This facility must be purged. We cannot risk." "Risk what?" Sarah interrupted. "Risk admitting that your perfect understanding wasn't so perfect. Risk accepting that something beautiful could come from what you thought was a disaster." She stepped forward, unafraid. "You abandoned these people because you couldn't control what they were becoming. But look at what they've achieved. They're not just surviving. They're thriving. They've created a new form of consciousness, a perfect blend of organic life and crystalline technology." The facility's crystals sang with the truth of her words as more of the transformed beings emerged from their pods, each one adding their unique resonance to the growing symphony. The Meridian inspection team drew closer together, overwhelmed by the display. Administrator Vax's crystalline form flickered rapidly, processing the impossible scene before them. "Our protocols, our understanding, were incomplete," Sarah finished gently. "Just like you thought these beings were incomplete. But sometimes the most perfect solution isn't the one you plan. It's the one that evolves naturally." Subject 247 raised their hands, and the facility's crystals pulsed in response, creating a dazzling display of light and energy. "We offer peace," they said, their voice carrying the harmony of hundreds. "We offer understanding. We offer proof that change, even unexpected change, can lead to transcendence." The Meridian Administrator stood silent for a long moment, their crystalline form refracting the light show around them. When they finally spoke, their voice held a new harmonic, one that might have been wonder. "In 900 years of quarantine protocols," Vax said slowly, "we never considered, never imagined. That's the problem with perfection." Sarah smiled. "It doesn't leave room for imagination, for growth, for the kind of beautiful accidents that lead to new forms of life." The facility's song reached a crescendo as the last of the prisoners awakened, their combined consciousness flowing through the living crystal like a tide of light and thought. The Meridian inspection team's weapons lowered, their own crystalline forms beginning to resonate in sympathy with the transformed beings. But in that moment of seeming triumph, Sarah's tablet flashed a warning. The facility's power core was reaching critical levels, not from failure this time, but from the surge of energy created by hundreds of newly awakened crystalline minds. They had won the ideological battle. Now they had to prevent their victory from becoming their destruction. Humanity's victory. Warning lights flashed across the facility as the power core's energy levels continued to spike. The crystalline network, beautiful in its awakening, was now threatening to tear itself apart with its own success. "Rex, give me a status report," Sarah called, her fingers flying across her tablet's interface. Power core operating at 147% capacity and rising. Crystal matrix showing signs of stress fractures. Estimate complete structural failure in 27 minutes. Administrator Vax's form flickered with alarm. The containment protocols were never designed to handle this level of integration. The facility will destroy itself. "No," Sarah said firmly, her mind racing. "We didn't come this far to fail now." She turned to Subject 247, whose crystalline form was pulsing with the combined energy of their people. "You're not just individuals anymore. You're a network. Can you feel the power flow?" "We feel it," they responded, their voice carrying the harmony of hundreds. "It builds, it grows, but we cannot contain it." "Then don't try to contain it," Sarah said, inspiration striking. "Direct it. Shape it. The facility isn't just your prison anymore. It's becoming your body. Your home." She turned to the Meridian administrator. "Your people built this place with living crystal, right? Designed to grow, to adapt." "Under strictly controlled conditions," Vax replied. "This level of autonomous growth was never intended." "Forget what was intended," Sarah interrupted. "Look at what's actually happening. The crystal matrix isn't just housing their consciousness. It's becoming an extension of it. They don't need to contain the power. They need to use it to reshape the facility itself." Understanding dawned in Subject 247's crystalline eyes. They raised their hands, and the facility's walls began to pulse with new purpose. The other transformed beings joined their consciousness to the effort, their combined will flowing through the living crystal. The facility groaned as ancient structures began to shift. Walls flowed like liquid crystal, reforming into more organic patterns. The rigid geometric design of the meridians gave way to something new, something that blended the precision of crystal with the fluidity of life. "Impossible," Vax whispered, watching as their perfect prison transformed into something beyond their understanding. "Power core stabilizing," Rex reported. "Crystal matrix restructuring to accommodate increased energy flow. It's adapting." Sarah watched in awe as the transformation spread throughout the facility. The former prisoners weren't just changing their prison. They were evolving it, turning a place of containment into a living habitat perfectly suited to their new form of existence. "This is what happens when you work with nature instead of against it," she said softly. "When you allow for change instead of fearing it." The Meridian inspection team stood transfixed as the facility's final form took shape around them. Gone were the stark corridors and isolation chambers. In their place grew a vast crystalline ecosystem, where light and energy flowed like water, where consciousness merged with crystal in an endless dance of life and technology. Administrator Vax's crystalline form shifted through various patterns before settling into one that Sarah's translator interpreted as acceptance. "In all our centuries of existence, we sought perfection through control. Yet here, in our greatest failure, we find transcendence." "Not failure," Sarah corrected. "Evolution. Your living crystal technology didn't just transform them. They transformed it, made it into something greater than either form could be alone." Subject 247 approached the Meridian administrator, their crystalline form now radiating calm control. "We offer an exchange," they said, their voice carrying the wisdom of their entire network. "We will share what we have learned about true integration between organic and crystal. In return, we ask for recognition, acceptance, the right to exist as we have become." Vax was silent for a long moment, their form refracting light in complex patterns. Finally, They spoke. The Meridian Collective has maintained power through our monopoly on living crystal technology. To acknowledge your existence, to accept what you have become, it would change everything. Change isn't always a bad thing. Sarah smiled. Just look at what it did for them. The facility pulsed with one final transformation as its power systems achieved perfect balance. The crystal matrix now hummed with harmonious energy, a living symphony of consciousness and technology working in perfect unity. Besides, Sarah added, looking around at what had once been a prison and was now a wonder, I don't think you could stop it if you tried. They're not your prisoners anymore. They're pioneers. Administrator Vax's form settled into a pattern that Sarah's translator couldn't quite interpret, something between resignation and revelation. Perhaps it is time for the Meridian Collective to evolve as well. Sarah watched as the transformed beings began to explore their new home, their crystalline forms sending ripples of light, and thought through the living structure. Her salvage operation had turned into something far more valuable than mere technology. It had become a bridge between worlds, a proof that even the most rigid systems could adapt, given the right catalyst. Rex, she called, a smile playing on her lips. Update our salvage log. Mark this one as priceless. The facility's crystals pulsed in agreement, their light carrying the promise of a future where perfection wasn't found in control, but in the courage to embrace change. A future that needed both the precision of crystal and the adaptability of life. A future that humanity, in all its beautiful imperfection, had helped to create.